Hello and welcome to City Council Comments. I'm Steve Erickson along with Councilmember Brad Gostrowiak. Today we're talking about both the October 3rd and the October 17th City Council meetings. Thanks for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve.
Your first chance at doing the show.
Right. Thank you. Happy to serve.
All right. We'll move right into things. We had actually a fairly lengthy meeting for our second meeting here in October, a little over 2 hours. We'll start off talking about the items on the October 17th agenda. One of the first items there was a presentation from the Anoka-Hennepin School District on their upcoming referendum vote.
Correct. So what we had last night is a presentation from Chuck Holden from the Anoka-Hennepin School District, and he presented on the upcoming levy referendum for the Fit for the Future for the Anoka-Hennepin School District bond levy that's coming up. And he went over some of the reasons why this is required and some of the upgrades that are planned for the school district. And what I took away from it the most is he kind of made it Coon Rapids centric. So if you look at that presentation last night, he talked about what he's going to be doing or what the plans would be for the Coon Rapids High School. Coon Rapids High School, is one of the older schools in the district, built in the 1950s. And the biggest thing is they feel that the main entrance is not as secure as it needs to be. So what they're going to be doing is, if this is accepted by the voters, is they're going to move that main entrance around to the back of the building, closer to the field house and the auditorium, so as guests and after-school events work, they're coming into the area that they need to access. It'll be a lot more secure and just a better way to go for our future.
All right, so the schools will all be updated. Basically, if this passes, there will be 2 new elementary schools constructed, and then the rest of the schools would see updates. As far as the tax impact on home, a $200,000 home, they're talking about $11 a month tax increase.
Correct. That would have been a $14 tax increase, but actually what they explained to us last night, it's reduced by a couple of dollars a month because some of the renovations that they're doing, specifically to HVAC and some other maintenance, it will actually be included in this Fit for the Future bond referendum and the work that's going to be done there. So they're taking some of that and moving it into this too.
All right. So again, the vote is taking place on Tuesday, November 7th. You can also vote early anytime between now and then. You can find out a lot more by going on to the school district's website. They have several videos. We saw one of those last night that we put together. We will be also airing some of those videos here on CTN in the coming weeks.
Very good.
All right. Moving along, we had a public hearing and council considered the introduction of an ordinance on the Springbrook Drainage District Dissolution. Say that 10 times fast.
Exactly. So the Springbrook Drainage Dissolution has to do with a special taxing district that was set up back in the 1980s, and it's an area around University Avenue and 85th Avenue over there in some of the industrial area along Evergreen Road. So the special taxing district was set up to deal with the drainage issues that were over there. So that was, like I said, set up in the 1980s, and it was active through about the mid-1990s. Since the mid-1990s, the district has actually, there has been no activity, there has been no taxing, there has been no activity at all. So as just part of a routine, like a housekeeping, maintenance type of thing, the same process that created the district is necessary to dissolve the district. So that was introduced last night, and we had a public hearing. What was interesting is in the public hearing, we did hear from some folks, and we have decided that it's introduced. The dissolution is now introduced, but we're going to be looking at this at a future work session to make sure that, is it the right time to dissolve that district? Maybe we would need to reevaluate the district. There was some issues with some future expansion on those sites that might impact the way water is being drained out. So we'll be looking at that.
All right, so again, you guys are going to have a work session or talk more about this, and it sounds like the actual ordinance might come back at the second meeting in November.
Well, we're not exactly sure. It all depends on what happens in a work session. It's considered introduced right now. It doesn't have to come back for a vote at the next meeting, but it will be coming up for some type of action in the coming months.
All right. Council considered resolutions awarding a contract. This is for bunker renovations up at the golf course. And this is an exciting project.
It is an exciting project. Our star golf course here in Coon Rapids is in need of some renovations. Specifically, what this is for is the bunker renovations. So as the game of golf is involved, the bunkers become more and more important to more people that play up there. And our bunkers are in need of renovation to make them a little bit smaller and also to make them a little bit more sustainable. Right now, all the bunkers at our golf course have a liner underneath, and there's a lot of maintenance involved in making sure that that liner doesn't get exposed and that it's covered and things like that. So this is going to replace and upgrade 9 holes in 2018.
Okay. And this is actually a project they started the previous year. They're kind of doing it in a 3-year phase here. This would be the 2nd year of renovations. The contract went to Hartman Companies in the amount of $305,000, and this was actually a little higher than they expected this to come in.
Correct. It came in a little bit higher, and actually I asked Tim Anderson, our golf director out there, about this, and he explained that there's a couple of factors that created this. One was the fact that we're renovating more bunkers, but each one of them is a little bit smaller. So that was going into consideration. The second consideration is that some of the grasses and the sods and the seeding that's required here weren't fully taken into consideration, so that the different types of sods that are required increase the cost a little bit. The other thing that you pointed out is that they did renovate 9 bunkers last year, and the reason we're going forward with the remaining bunkers was so well received. And we want to make sure that we keep this resource that we have in Coon Rapids as a top destination for golfers, and this is going to do that.
All right. Good week to golf, by the way. It's been so
week.
nice. I was thinking all the people that are probably out there, at least today and the rest of this week.
Right, in the 70s, can you believe that?
Yeah, crazy. All right, Council considered and actually adopted ordinances 2195, 2196, and 2197. This repeals recent revisions to several city codes. This is related to recycling.
This is related to multi-unit recycling. And you're right, there was a rescission vote last night. It's not something that the council does very often. What occurred here is earlier in the year, it was presented to the council that we should amend our city ordinance on recycling to get more recycling done at these multifamily unit residences. So moving them to a 1-to-1 recycling ratio, trash to recycling that is, and a weekly pickup. Those were 2 pretty big changes that went into effect. So the city did recommend and move forward with that ordinance. Soon after it was enacted, the city council staff and others started hearing from quite a few concerned property owners that this was affecting them in a pretty negative manner. So we took it back to work session where there was about 25 interested parties, and we got their feedback. And really what we did is we decided, yes, we do need to step back from this. We're still gonna have some work done on this, but we're stepping back from the ordinance that was put into play, reverting back to the old ordinance. And as a matter of fact, the old ordinance, there's some discrepancies in that. So we're gonna have to go back and revisit this anyway. And at that time, we're gonna address this one more time.
All right. So it sounds like maybe some of these will come back eventually, maybe just more slowly. Sounds like there might also be a need for some education there about recycling as well.
Right. I think that's a good point. I think the biggest thing here is the education, the communication to the renters themselves. What we heard from the business owners is they certainly can't force their residents to recycle. So if they can't force their residents to recycle, how can we actually force those folks into providing services that they don't need? So what we're going to do is through communication, through education, I think we can take a different approach on this. Certainly we want to ensure that all of our residents in Coon Rapids have access to as much recycling as possible, convenient access to recycling, and that's what we're working for.
Yeah, because I find it interesting. I feel like we've heard previously from people living in single-family homes that they wish they had sort of a weekly recycling pickup.
Right.
And that wasn't included in this, but
right.
You know, down the line, I imagine we might be seeing more recycling.
Right, and it really is. It's you can't force it, but if you put the resources in place, we're going to get what we need. As a matter of fact, Coon Rapids is a national leader in recycling as it is, not only a state leader, but a national leader. So we're going down the right path, and we're just going to step back from this, re-examine it. We're going to make sure that we introduce it the right way next time.
All right. Council considered resolution accepting plans and specifications. This is for the Hansen Water Tower rehabilitation and authorizing the solicitation of bids. So those plans were accepted and the specifications, and it sounds like the water tower needs to be repainted.
That's correct. Yeah, the tower on Hansen Boulevard, of course, is a massive and large and very important piece of Coon Rapids infrastructure. It's our newest water tower. It was built in 2003. And what's interesting here is that a coating on a water tower really should last more than 15 years. But what our city engineers and our staff and others have noticed is up on the top of the water tower, where there's activity, where folks are accessing the top of the water tower for things like radio towers and police towers and antennas and things like that, they're starting to see some of the coating starting to peel away. The primer's there, but the coating's peeling away. So what we've decided to do is be proactive on this. We're going to hire a company to come in and remove all of the loose debris. We're going to get back down to good primer. We're going to repaint the areas that are necessary at a substantial savings over a complete renovation. And this should get us about another 10 years of life out of the coating on that water tower.
All right, so the original coating was supposed to last a lot longer, but it didn't. Is there any way to go back to the person who put the paint on originally?
That's a good question. It's a question that I asked last night to staff. My research was that a coating on a new water tower should last between 25 and 30 years. Being that we only got 15 years out of portions of this coating, I asked that same question. Unfortunately, the warranty on the coating for this project was only 2 years. So we're 13 years out of warranty. So that's why we got to take it upon ourselves now to go ahead and get this taken care of as most cost effective as we can.
Yeah, so it sounds like once this is done, this will provide an additional 10 to 12 years of life expectancy for that surface.
That's correct.
All right, and again, this will actually happen starting in May of 2018. A little too cold now. Unless it was this week and they could get it all done. But,
well, yeah, you make a great point. It's going to happen in 2018, weather permitting. And that was one of the questions, or one of the answers that I got from our staff, was that we weren't exactly sure what happened to this finish. It could have been weather related, too cold temperatures, maybe some moisture or whatever. So we're going to make sure it gets done right.
All right, so again, that'll be painted in approximately May of 2018. Looks like it takes about 6 weeks to complete.
It's a big project.
All right. Council considered a joint powers agreement with Anoka County. This is for the construction of the Hansen Boulevard Railroad Grade Separation Project. If you haven't heard about this, I don't know where you've been. We've been talking about it for several years now, and it's actually going to become a reality.
That's exactly right. Finally got passed through the legislative session last year with the funding to create this overpass. Our chief, Piper, on our police chief, was instrumental. Fire chief was instrumental in getting this done for us. But last night at the City Council, we introduced a joint powers agreement with the County of Anoka, because this is going to be a joint project with the County of Anoka and Coon Rapids. Of course, County Road 78, Hansen Boulevard, is a county road, so they're going to be the lead agency on this. And what we wanted to do was make sure that in this joint powers agreement, first of all, the timing on the project changed a little bit from what was originally envisioned. The cost hasn't changed, the city's cost hasn't changed, but originally envisioned we could get this bridge over the Hansen railroad crossing up there done in 1 year. In looking back at this, it looks like it's going to be a little bit more efficient, makes a lot more sense to do this over 2 seasons. So being that it's going to be done over 2 seasons, there were some folks on the council, including myself, that wanted to make sure that we have assurances in this joint powers agreement with the Anoka County to make sure that the road surfaces are going to be adequate over that winter period, because there's a lot of impacted homes and families and residential areas on this. And given the experience that we had over on Foley and last year, we want to make sure that that is not handled in the same way this year. So we've got that covered in this.
All right, so it sounds like it could have been 1 season, but it'll be very close. There's a lot of fiber optics and a lot of utilities and stuff to move. So like you said, it's a big project on a big road, which will mean now that it will be closed for essentially 2 years, not straight, but from like May of 2018, does it sound like, up until about November. Then they'll reopen it for the winter and start again in like May of 2019, and then hope to have it finished before the start of school in September of 2019.
That's exactly correct, and the county does really make an effort. They look around that school time is when that opens, because we don't want to have that much impact on the transportation when the school opens again. And the two-part process on this. Like you said, there's a lot of utilities that are going in, so a lot of the utilities work can be done on one side. There's also actually 2 bridges in this. There's going to be the main overpass bridge and then another bridge adjoining into a neighborhood. So.
All right. So, and then 2019, they're also talking about upgrading Hansen Boulevard north of Highway 10 between basically where the Holiday is there and McDonald's up to Main Street. So 2019 will be a fun summer for construction.
Yeah, Hansen Boulevard is going to be a busy place in 2018 and 2019. Not only that, Steve, but the renovations on Lions Park was right there on Hansen Boulevard too. So that's planned in 2019.
Yeah, so 2019 will be the key year there. And it sounds like where they're redoing Hansen north of Highway 10, they will keep that open under traffic.
That is correct.
Whereas over by the railroad tracks, that will be a full closure.
Right. You know, there's gonna be an impact to folks moving through those areas, but it'll be communicated well to our constituents, and there's a lot of different ways to get through that corridor in the meantime.
All right. Well, while we're on the topic of traffic, let's talk about this proposal for a Riverdale area traffic study. Of course, anybody that's driven up there knows it can be problematic in certain areas of there to get in and out.
Right.
And we're going to do a traffic study up in that entire area.
Exactly. The traffic in that area has been looked at and discussed multiple times. I know that earlier in this year we held a work session specifically looking at the traffic and what can we do in the traffic area that's right across from Menards and going into the to the Costco there. There's a lot of folks that have issues with that, and it's a busy place. So we are not only looking at that, but we're actually looking at all of Riverdale in one scope. There's a lot of different points in Riverdale, whether it's that entrance into the Costco, whether it's the way that the roads kind of curve around throughout Riverdale, whether it's the kind of substandard intersection that we have over in front of Home Depot and SA over there, 124th and River Rapids Drive. That's going to be looked at. At the same time, we figured this would be a good time to do a traffic study is because the road that runs over in front of Walmart and Northdale Boulevard over there, that's actually being turned back to the city. That's a county road right now. It's being turned back to the city. So the city takes over jurisdiction on that in 2018. When we resurface that road, we're going to want to make sure that we address that intersection right there in front of that Walmart as well. So we hired an outside consulting firm for this, SRF Consulting. They're going to take it head to toe. They're going to cover about 10 different areas of traffic impact. They're going to get back to the city staff and city council, and we're going to have some information that we can move forward with from there.
All right, so basically they'll study these areas, do traffic counts, and then probably provide recommendations as what can be done to make these areas better?
Right. The big thing here is they're going to be providing recommendations of what can be done, because I think a lot of us know what the issues are right now, but it's how to address them and make sure that the traffic is flowing the way we want it to.
Right, and it's easy to say, well, put a traffic signal here or there or what, but then that impacts other things down the line. So
Absolutely.
That's what needs to be studied.
That's correct.
All right. Council considered an agreement with the City of Fridley for criminal prosecution services. This is something different here.
This is, and so what we've got here is Coon Rapids is a little unique in that we have our own legal staff on staff here. The City of Fridley outsources all of their work. So the City of Fridley actually approached us several months ago and asking about maybe they could jointly use some of our legal services for just the criminal prosecution portion of the things. Those are things like moving violations, petty misdemeanors, things of that nature. And so our city staff and our legal department put together a proposal, presented it to the City of Fridley, and the City of Fridley found it to be an attractive offer. So last night at the City Council meeting, we voted on if we should allow or enter into this agreement with the City of Fridley to share these legal services. So some of my main concerns were with data privacy. Of course, I thought maybe there would be some kind of conflicts of interest between the City of Coon Rapids and our friends over in Fridley. Our staff did a lot of good work in answering my questions. Our legal counsel answered my questions on that. So at the end, we voted to move forward with this project. It's going to well utilize our resources, making things a little bit more efficient too, I think, in the meantime. For example, one of the efficiencies that was brought to our attention last night is the fact that calendars can be shared. So instead of, for example, booking a calendar with the county, system with Coon Rapids, Fridley, and in the county. Now we're looking at one calendar that's combining Coon Rapids and Fridley.
All right. So this agreement will go for 5 years. It looks like there's a chance to extend it another 5 years, but it sounds like there's some outs in here if it becomes an issue at some point.
Great point. We're going to enter into a 5-year agreement, but we have checks on this every year. So we'll look at the program. How is it running after 1 year? Are we covering all the costs to ensure that there is no extra cost to Coon Rapids taxpayers, making sure that things are remaining efficient and within the spirit of the agreement. And we'll do that every year over 5 years.
All right, but it sounds like this is a win-win for Coon Rapids. Coon Rapids is able to add a third assistant city attorney with this funding, as well as another legal secretary.
That's correct, and there's also, we talked about a little bit last night of a victim services grant, and that's going to actually be shared between the two agencies as well. So there is definitely efficiencies in doing this.
All right. Council introduced an ordinance revising the utility franchise fee. This is something that's been long talked about as well, and it sounds like there's action finally being taken on this.
Right, so franchise fee, not a lot of folks know exactly what a franchise fee is, but basically the franchise fee in Coon Rapids is a fee on the utilities. So, for example, your main power company, the city of Coon Rapids collects a 4% fee on top of the energy source, basically because all of these services are run through city right-of-way and utilizing city resources. So over the years, some very, very large consumers of electricity have approached us asking that, pointing out that maybe their share of that franchise fee was overly burdensome, and we've noticed that. It's actually something that we've looked at many, many years. So we decided last night to take a look at this, and actually after working with some other communities, we found a good solution for this. We actually modeled a solution after the city of Shakopee, where we are going to cap the maximum franchise fee for some of our largest users, and then just have it a flat 0.5% after a set amount of usage. So really what this does is it allows those big users to be able to forecast. Now, as they grow their business and they can see their energy demand rising, we're not going to overtax them out of our community. We're making sure that our community stays competitive. We want to encourage growth with some of these big companies that we have here.
All right, so this will be a little bit of an impact to the budget, the city's budget?
There is some impact for this, but we actually planned for it. In the proposed 2018 budget, we did budget for between a $35,000 and a $50,000 impact to our budget. That's going to have to be made up in other areas, but we've got it covered in our 2018 budget already.
All right. Well, that's all we had to talk about from our October 17th meeting. As we said, pretty long one, a lot of information to talk about there. Moving back to our first meeting of the month on October 3rd, we had a resolution accepting a victim service grant from the Minnesota Department of Public Safety Office of Justice.
Right. So what the city of Coon Rapids did is we applied for and received a grant from the state of Minnesota for what is called a victim services advocate. And what a victim service advocate will do for us is it actually just really what it sounds like. It is going to be an advocate for folks that are vulnerable. So, for example, October is Domestic Abuse Awareness Month. So folks sometimes when they're in these positions need extra help, an advocate to help them navigate through the legal system and to make sure that they're getting the proper justice that they require. So this is a great deal that we're getting from the city. It funds one full-time staff position for these purposes. And going back to the earlier question with Fridley and our joint situation there, actually this is going to fit right into that well and actually utilize this to its fullest extent. This has been a good thing for the city.
All right, so it looks like $70,000 per year is a grant for 2 years. The grant begins October 1st.
Right, and interesting you mentioned 2 years. We applied for a 1-year grant, but the state of Minnesota said, we're doing this in 2-year blocks. So we earned the grant for 1 year, but it turned into the 2-year grant already. So we've got this position for 2 years.
Not often they probably say, here, take more, we'll double it. All right, that sounds like a great thing. Moving along, Council considered a resolution amending the facility construction budget for evidence room safety improvements in our police department.
Right. This is actually kind of sad that we have
Yeah.
to talk about this, but really what this has to deal with is the illicit drugs that are out there right now, more and more, and you see this nationally. There's an ingredient in there that's very, very hazardous, very, very deadly, in fact, fentanyl and carfentanil. So as our officers are out in the field and processing drug evidence, we have to do everything we can to ensure that they're not exposed to those very, very carcinogenic drug, those types of substances. So what this does is we are going to get a ventilation system installed into our police station evidence room. So when these things are processed in, and all of this evidence, of course, has to be processed. So as it's being processed, it's all going to be processed in under a very safe environment with this ventilation, really limiting exposure to our police staff and others in that area.
All right, and this came on a recommendation from the Drug Enforcement Agency, otherwise called the DEA,
Right.
and the money for this will be taken out of the 2017 facility construction fund budget.
That is correct. We've got to make, we're going to take it out of the construction fund. Yep.
All right, and it was about $35,000, it looks like?
Yeah, it's not a cheap piece of equipment. Unfortunately, like I said, it's sad that we need to do this, but it's necessary. It's just a necessary thing that we have to do, and we certainly have to ensure that our officers are safe, and everyone else that's around that and processing that evidence needs to be safe while they're doing it.
Certainly the opioid, we're hearing a lot about that these days, and sort of an issue all across the country.
National epidemic. I just saw it again last night on ABC News that this stuff's coming in from China, and it's making its all the way into, right into our communities. Very, very sad.
Yeah, certainly a lot more education needing to be done there too.
True.
With our young people. All right, that is all the items we had from that council meeting. We'll talk about you now. This is your first year. This is your first council comments, as we said.
Right.
Your first year on the council. It's been about 10 months now. How are things going?
Things are going well. I appreciate the learning curve that I've undergone. Hopefully, constituents think I'm doing a good job for them and representing my Ward 1 with the city. I've learned a lot. I've learned that there's a lot of good people with our city. A lot of people that are really trying to do the right thing to make our city, a real gem up in the northern metro area. I'm glad to be part of it.
And I bet you're learning there's a lot of meetings as well, not just city council meetings.
Great point, Steve. This meeting, for example, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, usually there's at least 2 meetings a week. There's usually a work session and a council meeting every other week, but there's always stuff filtered on in between. And so it's interesting, and I'm enjoying it.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you on board. Thanks for being here today and doing the first show here. That's all we have, unless you have anything else you want to add.
I don't think so.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you at home for watching, and we'll see you back here after our 2 meetings in November.